Good evening. My name is Jackie Kemp, and I'm your news presenter for this evening. Um, I'm a writer and have a Substack, and we'll just go straight into it. Ukraine update, day 812, day 812. Large fires were reported around the Russian-controlled Belbek air base on occupied Crimea this morning, after the governor of nearby Sevastopol said the city had come under massive Ukrainian missile attack. The US is considering sending an extra Patriot air defense battery to Ukraine. It comes after the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken arrived in Kiev on Tuesday on his first visit to Ukraine since a major US aid package was passed last month. Blinken, who arrived by train from Poland in an unannounced visit, met with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Zelensky described the US aid as crucial and thanked Blinken, but also said Ukraine desperately needed 2 more air defense systems to protect the city of Kharkiv, which has been hit repeatedly by Russian strikes in recent weeks. Blinken joined band 1999 on stage at Barman Diktat, picking up a red guitar to play Neil Young's Rockin' in the Free World. Ukraine's military said its forces pulled back to new positions in 2 areas of the northeastern Kharkiv region, where Moscow is pressing an offensive, and warned of a Russian force build-up to the north near the Sumy region. Russia said on Tuesday it had taken a 10th border village, Burugvatka, in Kharkiv region. The police chief of Vovchansk, a town 5 kilometers from the border that has been the target of one of the main Russian thrusts, reported exchanges of fire in the north of the town. Russian strikes on residential areas in the center of Kharkiv city injured 20 people on Tuesday, officials said. Ukrainian grid operator Ukrenergo Energo said on Tuesday that power shortages caused by damage from Russian strikes had prompted controlled countrywide cuts from 9 p.m. to midnight. Russian President Vladimir Putin will visit China on the 16th and 17th of May, Chinese state media reported. President Biden has signed legislation broadly supported in Congress that prohibits any imports of Russian uranium into the US from the 12th of August. Russia provides about 20 to 30% of the enriched uranium used in the US and Europe, and 44% globally, according to the US Energy Department. Russia has put its Bulava intercontinental ballistic missile into service, the TASS state news agency reported on Tuesday. Israel-Gaza latest. At least 35,230 people have been killed in Gaza since the 7th of October, according to the latest figures from the Gaza Health Ministry today. The International Rescue Committee said it faces significant disruption to its humanitarian operations due to Israel's recent ground operation in Rafah. The US Secretary of State Antony Blinken said that Israel must have a clear and concrete plan for the future of Gaza. Speaking at a press conference in Kiev today, Blinken said that the US do not support and will not support an Israeli occupation, adding that we can't have a vacuum in Gaza that's likely to be filled by chaos. Turkey's Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan told his US counterpart Antony Blinken that Israel's attack on the Gazan city of Rafah is unacceptable. Fidan also told Blinken that it was important to achieve a ceasefire in Gaza as soon as possible. EU chief diplomat Joseph Borrell has urged Israel to end its operation in Rafah immediately, as the operation disrupts the distribution of humanitarian aid in Gaza and is leading to more internal displacement, famine and suffering. Israel and Egypt are embroiled in a growing diplomatic row over the Rafah border crossing after Israel's takeover of the Gaza side of the crossing, amid warnings Cairo may be planning to downgrade relations. Israel's Defense Minister Yoav Gallant called on the Israeli government to make a decision about post-war governance in Gaza. Gallant said he would not agree to a military regime in Gaza and claimed he had promoted a plan for a new Palestinian administration not linked to Hamas. Benjamin Netanyahu said Israel must do what is required in Rafah despite disagreements with its longtime ally, the US. The Israeli leader said that it's pointless to talk about the day after while Hamas is still intact. Netanyahu also repeated his claim that there is not a humanitarian crisis in southern Gaza. Ireland's Foreign Minister, Michael Martin, said his country will recognise Palestine as a sovereign state by the end of the month. In March, the leaders of Spain, Ireland, Slovenia said in a joint statement that they stand ready to recognise Palestinian statehood. And last week, EU Foreign Policy Chief Joseph Borrell moved to the 21st of May as the date. Netanyahu has said his government unanimously rejects the US to promote the recognition of a Palestinian state. The US Department has moved a $1 billion package of weapons aid for Israel into the congressional review process, two US officials said on Tuesday. The latest weapons package includes tank rounds, mortars, and armored vehicles, according to multiple sources in the US media. Palestinian officials said Israeli troops killed a man as clashes broke out after a West Bank march commemorating the mass displacement of Palestinians in the Nakba of 1948. The Scottish Government declares a housing emergency. Social Justice Secretary Shirley-Ann Somerville has pledged that the Scottish Government will take firm action with the powers at its disposal as it declared a housing emergency, and called for commitment from the UK Government and local authorities to work in partnership to tackle one of the defining issues of the generation. Responding to a Labour Party housing debate in the Scottish Parliament this afternoon, Ms Somerville declared that there's a national housing emergency as a result of factors including Brexit, UK government austerity and economic incompetence, and she called for all parties in Scotland to work together to examine all options to make progress and to unite in calling for the UK government to reverse a cut to Scotland's capital budget of almost 9%. In 2024 to 25, despite cuts to Scotland's capital budget, Ms Somerville said the Scottish Government will invest nearly $600 million in affordable housing and over $90 million for discretionary housing payments. Cabinet Secretary for Social Justice Shirley-Ann Somerville said, "The housing emergency is one of the defining issues of a generation, caused by a decade and a half of Tory austerity, soaring inflation as a result of UK government incompetence, and the almost 9% cut in the Scottish Government's capital budget handed down by Westminster." Sorry about the dog. Despite having one hand tied behind our back by Westminster austerity, we have taken firm action on housing, and we can be proud of a record showing that we've delivered significantly more affordable homes than in England and Wales, and have taken firm action on rent increases. But still, too many people in Scotland are struggling to make ends meet due to housing costs, or struggling to find suitable housing at all. So I pledge today that I will work constructively and in good faith with the UK Government and local authorities across Scotland in considering what more can be done to tackle the housing emergency. As a first step, this will require the current UK Government and the UK Labour Party to commit to reversing the almost 9% cut to Scotland's capital budget. And I'm today asking the Scottish Parliament to unite with one voice to demand a change in approach and an end to austerity, which has caused untold harm to people across the country. The Trussell Trust says 262,400 emergency food parcels were distributed in Scotland last year. New analysis from the Trussell Trust found that between the 1st of April 2023 and the 31st of March 2024, 262,400 emergency food parcels were distributed in Scotland. Of these, 60% were for families with children, highlighting a 21% increase on 5 years ago. The research also showed that over 101,000 people in Scotland were forced to turn to a charity for essentials such as food, and that the number of people going without essentials had risen by 4% on last year's figures. Commenting, the SNP Social Justice spokesperson David Linden said, "The Westminster-made cost of living crisis, coupled with the UK Government's austerity agenda and cruel benefit sanctions, have left Scotland's most vulnerable seeking food parcels from charities and food banks. This is unforgivable. It's the legacy of 14 years of consecutive Conservative rule that the people of Scotland did not vote for." However, with the Labour Party committed to the same fiscal spending as the Tories and in favour of policies such as the two-child cap and rape clause, it's clear that Sir Keir Starmer does not offer the change Scotland needs. Brexit border IT outages delay import of perishable items to the UK by up to 20 hours. Lorries carrying perishable food and plants from the EU are being held for up to 20 hours at the UK's busiest Brexit border post as failures with the government IT system delay imports entering Britain. Businesses have described the government's new border control checks as a disaster after IT outages led to lorries carrying meat, cheese and cut flowers being held for long periods, reducing the shelf life of their goods and prompting retailers to reject some orders. That's fine. The worst disruption was last weekend, with dozens of lorries being held at the government's control post, serving Dover and the Channel Tunnel. for periods of between 8 and 20 hours after the IT system that registers goods went down. Ministers brought in physical checks on animal and plant products from the EU at the start of this month as part of its post-Brexit import regime. However, since their introduction, problems with the government's automatic licence verification system, ALVS, have led to an increasing number of lorries being held at border posts for many hours while the checking of documents is carried out manually. Richard Thompson, the SNP's business and trade spokesperson, described the development as a disaster for business, which has left the shelf life of goods being reduced or rejected by the retailer. Mr Thompson said, "This is the sad reality of broken Brexit Britain. The UK government's new Brexit border controls not only cost businesses a colossal sum of money, but now we're learning that basic things like the IT system don't operate properly." With both Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer committed to this broken Brexit Britain ideology, it's clear that regardless of who operates number 10 after the next election, it won't deliver the change Scotland needs. Scottish Secretary Alistair Jack says the UK government will push through building a new nuclear reactor in Scotland. In questioning the House of Lords Constitutional Committee, Scottish Secretary Alistair Jack says he plans to forge ahead with building a new nuclear reactor in Scotland. Mr Jack stated that the UK government pushed through building a new nuclear reactor in Scotland. In questioning the House of Lords Constitution Committee, Scottish Secretary Alistair Jack said he plans to forge ahead with building a new nuclear reactor in Scotland. Mr Jack said that the UK government is planning to work with unionist parties to deliver a new nuclear reactor in Scotland. Speaking to the committee, he said, "On the small nuclear reactors, I've asked the Energy Minister to plan for one in Scotland because I believe in 2026 we'll see a unionist regime again in Holyrood." Scotland has only one operational nuclear site, Torness, set to be decommissioned in 2028. Responding to Jack's comments, Tommy Shepherd said, "Alistair Jack doesn't have long left in office. Instead of working to make the lives of people in Scotland better, he's spending his time undermining and patronising our democratic government." His comments and the decision to ignore the Scottish Government on building new nuclear reactors shows exactly how this Westminster Government sees Scotland and its people, a nation that should know its place. Scotland doesn't need an expensive nuclear power. We already have abundant natural energy resources. We just need full power over energy so Scotland can take full advantage of the green energy gold rush. The RWE announces a large-scale hydrogen plant in Grangemouth. The RWE has announced plans to develop a groundbreaking green hydrogen project at Grangemouth. It says the initiative underscores their commitment to driving forward the hydrogen economy and contributing to Scotland's decarbonisation goals. Tackling emissions by diversifying and boosting renewable energy infrastructure and usage is a key part of the Scottish Government's just transition. And RWE say the Grangemouth green hydrogen plant will accelerate Scotland's move to a sustainable economy. RWE will supply the first hydrogen produced to INEOS Grangemouth, assisting them in reducing their greenhouse gas emissions. Once developed, consented and operational, the initial capacity is anticipated to be up to 200 MWE, potentially producing up to 3.6 tonnes of hydrogen per hour, with ambitions for potential expansion. This project will reduce INEOS's carbon emissions and offer other industrial users the chance to transition to green hydrogen, putting Grangemouth at the heart of decarbonisation in Scotland. The project is scheduled to be operational by 2029. Cabinet Secretary for Net Zero, Mary McCallan, welcomed RWE's announcement when she met with representatives at the All Energy Conference earlier today. She said, "The energy transition presents an era-defining opportunity for Scotland's environment and economy. Hydrogen has the potential to play a significant role in this, particularly in relation to our industrial sector, and it's encouraging to see progress being made in this area. I'm particularly pleased to see this happen at vacant land within the Grangemouth complex in collaboration with INEOS. Hydrogen that is powered by renewable electricity could be a great export opportunity to the rest of the UK and to our European neighbours, contributing to their decarbonisation journey and supporting Scotland's economy." CNN confirms it will host the first Biden-Trump presidential debate on the 27th of June. Shortly after the Biden-Harris re-election campaign proposed two TV debates between Biden and Trump ahead of November's presidential vote, both men agreed upon the date of their first debate, the 27th of June. CNN confirmed they would host the first debate of 2024 on that date from the crucial battleground state of Georgia. On Wednesday morning, Biden said in a video shared on social media, "Donald Trump lost two debates to me in 2020, and since then he hasn't shown up for a debate. Now he's acting like he wants to debate me again. Well, make my day, pal. I'll do it twice." He then jabbed, "So let's pick dates, Donald. I hear you're free on Wednesdays," referring to the free day in Trump's current campaign finance violations trial in New York. The Democrats' proposal noted the debates in previous election cycles had not concluded until after early voting started, and debates were structured like an entertainment spectacle and not a serious exchange of ideas. Arranging the presidential debates has been increasingly vexed, with both parties seeking competitive advantage, but they're considered highly important in gaining the attention of crucial swing voters. Slovakia's Prime Minister Robert Fico shot and injured. Slovakia's populist Prime Minister Robert Fico is in a life-threatening condition after being injured in a shooting, the Slovak government said. Reports on Slovakian TV said Fico, 59, was hit in the stomach after 4 shots were fired outside the House of Culture in the town of Handlova, about 150 kilometres northeast of the capital. He'd been meeting a small crowd of supporters when the shooting occurred. A suspect had been detained, they added. Police sealed off the scene. In a message posted to the Prime Minister's Facebook account, the government said the leader had been shot multiple times and the next few hours will decide. The post said that Fico is in need of urgent treatment and has been transported by helicopter to Banska Bystrica, as it would take too long to return to Bratislava. A spokesperson from the hospital said Fico had been conscious while being transported to the hospital and was being treated for bullet wounds. Speaking to Reuters, a spokesperson for the country's Interior Ministry described the incident as an assassination attempt. The country's Deputy Speaker of Parliament, Lubos Blaha, confirmed the incident during a session of Parliament. Slovakia's President, Zuzana Kaptovo, said she condemned the brutal attack, and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said, "I strongly condemn the vile attack on Prime Minister Robert Fico." Carbon capture and storage could support 3,000 jobs and boost Scotland's economy by 300 million per annum by 2042. More than 3,000 full-time equivalent jobs could be supported and 300 million generated for the wider economy through the establishment of a CO2 transport and storage sector in Scotland, linked to the deployment of carbon capture, utilisation and storage, according to new research. The findings, published in a report from the Centre for Energy Policy at the University of Strathclyde, suggest action on worker and skills shortages will be key to realising these economic gains. The jobs and GDP figures for a TNS sector that's fully operational by 2030 are respectively 300% and 84% higher than estimates for a scenario where no action is taken to alleviate labour market constraints. The study was undertaken by the Centre for Energy Policy as part of the Scotland's Net Zero Infrastructure Programme. Economic gains could be further amplified if a Scottish TNS sector developed a export market to sequester emissions from elsewhere in the UK or overseas. Professor Karen Turner, lead investigator and Centre for Energy Policy Director, said, "Lessons from this research on establishing a CO2 TNS sector in Scotland suggest there are significant potential gains to be had in terms of jobs and growth. Benefits emerging across the wider economy could offset the cost of the investment needed and those of government support. Yet, as with other efforts in the net zero space, a focus on addressing persistent skills and more shortage of workers is crucial. This is in terms of both maximising economic gains and enabling a just transition." A Scottish Government Community Energy Generation Growth Fund. A fund to help community groups across Scotland set up renewable energy generation projects is open for applicants. The £1.5 million Community Energy Generation Growth Fund will support local communities installing wind turbines and solar panels or developing other types of renewable energy generation such as hydro to meet local needs. Community groups will also be able to earn money from their projects by, for example, allowing them to sell excess energy generated. The fund forms part of the Scottish Government's Community and Renewable Energy Scheme, which has awarded more than £65 million in funding to date to over 900 renewable energy projects across the country. Net Zero Secretary Mary McCallan said, "Scotland is becoming a renewable energy powerhouse with enormous benefits for our people, economy and environment. This fund will support the creation of locally owned energy projects which can reduce costs, revenue and help drive transition to net zero." Scottish Government funding for football focused on mental well-being. A programme which uses football to promote mental health and well-being has received additional funding from Scottish Government's Changing Room has been awarded £100,000 for a 4th year. The funding builds on the Changing Room, a 12-week programme taking place Day of Scotland, and sports meant to open up as they participate in walking football games, stadium tours, pitchside walks, and talks from a motivational speaker. Extra Time aims to give people a chance to speak in more depth about their mental well-being. The programme is delivered by SAMH, Scottish Action for Mental Health, in partnership with the SPFL Trust and associate community trusts, Aberdeen, Rangers, Heart of Midlothian and Hibernian. Health Secretary Neil Gray, who visited the initiative at Pittodrie, home of Aberdeen FC, said, "We know it's never been more important to look after our physical and mental well-being. It's pleasing to see this initiative go into its fourth year and to hear that it's really making a difference to people's lives." Well, that's it for this evening. Before I go, I just want to remind you that at Broadcasting Scotland, we depend on the generosity of our supporters. Our programmes will always be free to view. However, if you can afford £5 a month, please consider becoming a Broadcasting Scotland supporter. To everyone who's donated and everyone who's signed up to make a regular monthly payment, thank you very much. Our focus must now move to securing the future of independent broadcasting for Scotland by growing our subscriber base and regular funding. Thank you again to our guests. Oh no, sorry, I meant to say that. Thank you to you for watching. Good night.